Yeah, so having in mind Tinuk ben Shir Yehudis, among all other members of Am Yisrael who require Rachmi Shemayim, particularly our Chayalim and Chayalot and Eretz Yisrael who are being Moiser Nefesh Kipshutai, to protect Am Yisrael and to really battle evil in the world is a really special thing to have them in mind, and they should really have us in mind as well. And Kol Yosher Eretz Yisrael and just Yidden, all over the world. Amen. So we're going to jump into the second teaching that we were supposed to get to last week, but it's a bit lengthy and we spent a lot of time on the first piece. And this teaching is Likutei Moharan 109, Kuf Tes. Kuf Tes. What's interesting about this Torah, among all the Torahs in Likutei Moharan, is that like many of the other teachings in this particular sefer, in a parallel sefer in the corpus of Kisvei Breslov called Likutei Moharan, Rebbe Nachman records for us the historical background of many of the Torahs. Even in some editions of Likutei Moharan, and mine, if you flip to the back, they'll write, based on all the other places where you find historical information in Kisvei Breslov, exactly when each and every Torah was said, what place it was, what year it was, around what Chag it was, what occasion it was in many cases. And for this Torah in Likutei Moharan, Rebbe Nachman lets us know that this teaching was written down in Iksav Yad from Rebbe Nachman B'Yaldusei, in his youth. Amen. Which many other teachings also were from the Rebbe's youth that are elaborated on in Likutei Moharan, because the Rebbe before his bar mitzvah wrote a sefer called Sefer Amidus, and Sefer Amidus is a whole sefer. It's also called Sefer Aleph Beis. It's just a collection of one-line aphorisms, hundreds and hundreds of one-liners that don't seem to have any makar, that don't seem to even make rational sense, many of them. Exactly why this segula, one that always pops into my head, I don't know why, maybe it's because it's emblematic in its strangeness, is that a woman that's having a difficult time in labor should put an apple on her head. And in this way, an apple on her head, this is a segula for an easy birth. Among many, many, many other pieces of advice, eitzas, segulas, and so on, all that was written before Rebbe Nachman was...
I'm just trying to picture a woman.
Yeah.
Give me the apple.
It's a story in Switzerland, the Willem Tell, where they're shooting the apple.
That's another thing.
I think that might be another thing.
I was always taught, if a segula gets you closer to the Rebbe, Shalom, do it. If it doesn't, stay away.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that a lot of people would just look at these Sefer Amidas, these little lines, and wonder, like, what is this? Where there's no makar for this, the product of a person before he's bar mitzvah. And then Reb Tzadok HaKohen Lublin, who lived a pretty long life, I think in his 70s or 60s, 70s, much later on in history, much later on in his life, him being the fourth generation of Hasidus, wrote Mar Mekaimas on the whole entire Sefer Amidus, demonstrating where Rebbe Nachman pulled these teachings from throughout Tarsh B'Ksav, Tarsh B'Alpid, Nigla, Nister, Medrash, Zohar, Ari, everything. For each and every, I think for I don't know, for each and every one, for many, many of them. Wow. And the ga'oinus of the excavation work by Rebbe Nachman to dig deep into the inner meanings of Psukim and Mamar Chazal is mind-blowing. Again, all of this having been created before the Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah, just to give an understanding of who he was, right? And
from the trees that grew after they got buried when they went out to the fields. That's right.
Oh, interesting.
Probably it's where it comes from.
I don't know. We'll have to look up the Maramakom of that particular one. There was other tzaddikim also in history who wrote Maramakomis. The Cherina Rav filled in a great deal of them. It was also second generation Breslover Chassid. So there was a lot that was produced by Rebbe Nachman in his youth. Rebbe Nachman once held up the Sefer Amidus. He said, "This made me into a yid." The learning that was sum totaled and collected in this Sefer, he said, this made me into a yid. So this is another teaching from Rebbe Nachman's youth, very, very deep, and obviously was a part of his own journey, part of his own avodah. So let's look inside. It says the Eligit Tzaddik, based on a pasuk in Koheles, Shlomo Melech teaches, Yesh hevel asher nasa la'aretz. Shlomo is listing all the things that don't seem to make sense, that are hevel, that are vain, that are frustrating, that are confusing, that take place in this world, and this is primary among them. Yesh hevel asher nasa la'aretz. There's a strange thing that takes place on this earth. Asher yesh tzadikim shemagia aleim k'maiser rishayim. There are righteous people that they get in return seemingly k'maiser rishayim, that they live difficult lives and they go through challenges and things don't work out for them, don't seem to work out. And then Shlomo Melech continues the flip side. He doesn't quote the pasuk here, but just to reach it, v'yesh risha'im that magia aleim k'maisei tzadikim, that there are wicked people who their whole life they seem to get good things, right, and everything works out for them, and they enjoy this world, and they have pleasures, and so on and so forth. This is the fundamental question that challenges the monotheistic faith. The understanding that everything comes from one just conscious being, and over here you have that it seems less din less dayan, where you can have a person who doesn't seem to be deserving who gets it, and the person who is deserving, on the contrary, is living a miserable life. How could that be? And this is the question of tzaddik v'toivloi, rasha v'raloi, that Moshe Rabbeinu already asked, which Chazal comment, that's what he meant when he asked Hashem, let me see your panim, let me see the inner workings of hashgacha, of how this all works out. And an answer is given over there, rasha ben tzaddik, tzaddik ben rasha v'chulei. But ultimately, this is a mystery. This is a total mystery. Says Rebbe Nachman what this means for me and you in our own avodah, very, very deep. Pirish, says the Rebbe, al pi remez, or really al pi soid, Chasidus is razin to razin, the real application of Kabbalah, of Pnimius HaTorah. He says, sure, hevel in the simple meaning of this pasuk refers to vanity, refers to something that Shlomo Melech looked at. He said, we can't understand this at all. It doesn't seem to work. Doesn't seem to make sense. There must be a higher consciousness running the show. But says the Rebbe, you could also read it very simply. Hevel means literally air, breath. Hainu hevel peh, like Chazal say, hevel piem, shal tinoika shal beisarabban is something very precious. Breath. Hainu hevel peh hayoytse mehagarein. Says the Rebbe, simple. This is a reference to breathing. But not just any kind of breathing. Migenuchi dikaganach. From a sigh. A Yiddish krechs. A sigh, a groan. Kol echad lefi erkoi. By means of this experience of the sigh, but not just the physical experience of the sigh, emotionally, what it represents, we're going to speak a lot about that. Kol echad lefi erkoi, each person in accordance with the nature of their hevel, the nature of their sigh, tzadikim yelchu, that tzadikim will proceed and will progress in Avodas Hashem because of this kind of sigh, which we'll see in a minute what that means. Upaishim yikashlu, but the sinners will stumble over this experience of this sigh. What does this mean? Says the Rebbe, Yeshu Rasha Kol Yamav, you can have a person who's mamash a wicked person all his life. But then there comes a moment of awakening. There comes a moment when looking back over the whole experience of the journey, you say, wow, like where did this get me? What did all of that avail me? I still have nothing, and I know that life wasn't about all the experiences that I thought life was about, but they were wasteful. They didn't get me anywhere. And Mamela, in this moment, umisaneach v'na al ha'avar, he groans and he sighs over the past. And he mamish experiences this word we're going to talk a lot about. He experiences regret. The real him wakes up and recognizes that wasn't really what I wanted all along. That wasn't what I wanted. He regrets. But chas v'shalom, there could be the parallel, chas v'shalom, the opposite, where you have a tzaddik mi'ikare, where you could have a person that really invested in Avodas Hashem and Yiddishkeit and killed himself and woke up every morning early and went to sleep late at night and stuck it out for every last mincha that was difficult for him to pull himself away from whatever he was busy with, and the sedarim that he puts in for years and years and years. And chas v'shalom, v'soya ala rishaynos. He looks back and he regrets all this effort that he put in. And he also, chas v'shalom, can sigh and can regret all that effort and come to the conclusion that also didn't avail him klum.
Because he missed on Gashmis?
Maybe, could be one of the reasons. Or because he just loses emunah and he says, what do I need this for?
There's one experience that just turns him off.
Or it can be that. So says the Rebbe, let's zoom out. Says the Rebbe, we were talking about havalim, right, hevel, but says the Rebbe, there are also two chavalim, there are two ropes. This is metaphoric, but it's very mevur in the whole entire Torah. But the way the Rebbe sets it out is very stark. Chevel de kedusha, there's one rope that's a rope of kedusha, ukenegdai, and parallel to this rope is a chevel that's called the chevel de tuma, a rope of tuma. What does a rope connote, even before going any weiter? What's the whole thing of a rope? What do we think about when we think of a rope? In this sense, how is a rope usually positioned?
Downwards.
From above to below. From above to below. This is what the Mefarshim explain on the pasuk where Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, and through Bilam, right? Yaakov chevel nachalasei ki chelik Hashem amai. Yaakov chevel nachalasei. Am Yisrael is the chevel of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's inheritance. What does this mean? His portion. It means that what Hakadosh Baruch Hu is above, Am Yisrael are the hishtalshalus of that kedusha down into this world below. The tselem alikim atem kriyim adam ein umas olam kriyim adam. We are the reflection, or at least we're meant to be in our ideal state, of the divine spirit. What is above is below. And that's why it says, Likutei Moharan Adam Levade, because Chas v'Shalom, the creatures would think that, that Adam Rishon is God, right? If he was alone. Because he's mamish the tzelem alikim, and that's why he needed Likutei Moharan Adam Levade, reconnect, which is mishtalshel further on, without getting to the whole sugya now, of Yisrael coming to Moshe Rabbeinu, also telling him that it's not good for you to be judging everyone alone. You need to have other people with you, because Yisrael was Avodah Avodah. So he knew the mistakes that could be made, and so he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, I already saw. It's become clear to me. There's only one Yachid, and that Yachid is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So you cannot be as much the svara of Hashem, Klape Adam Rishon. You can't be alone. You have to have others with you, right? That's Hashem. Yisrael advised Moshe Rabbeinu to delegate his authority to others. The same idea, but be'etzem, the Adam is a tzelem Elokim. Is a little bit of a reflection of Elokus above. Yaakov chevel nachalasei. Ata echad v'shimcha echad umika amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. Collectively we are echad. But collectively we're echad. We're here to demonstrate that light of achdus to all the umas ha'olam, to let them know that really we're not echad, they're not echad. There's only echad, yachad, umyuchad. And that's what it means. Yaakov chevel nachalasei. We're mishtalshel. The rope hangs from above to below. And our task is to try to climb that rope. And even within ourselves, there are inches of that rope that go in ascending manner. We start with the guf, and from the guf we can get into the low spirit called the nefesh. From the nefesh we can attach ourselves to the ruach, from the ruach to the neshama to chaya, chaya to yechida, and you can climb this ladder of being midabik to higher and higher parts of ourselves, wherein, beyond which, we encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ayin, Nefesh HaChaim, Shar Beis, at the end, where he talks about how to do this in Tefillah. And I'm going to make more reference to that source in a minute when we talk about breath.
This is a conscious effort, or this is just the way everyone's journey goes. Some take a little bit longer, some less long, or this is a conscious effort.
No, mamash a conscious effort.
So it's not like everyone's on a journey and they start, in this place, and then they progress and...
Halavai, and that's the ideal. When you think about Mesilas Yesharim, it's a ladder. It goes from step to step to step to step. But when I made reference about moving from nefesh to ruach, ruach to neshama, and so on, I'm speaking about a specific way of being mechaven to do that. And first we have to learn what each of those experiences are, but you can do that. And the Nefesh HaChaim outlines what that looks like. So that's Ayin Sham. That's not really our topic now, but that's an avodah. Al Kopanim, we find this concept of a chevel de kedusha. We can choose to be connected to that rope. We can think about it as a rope ladder even, right? That has like knots in it that you can climb up. That's going to bring you to a shirish of Kedusha. And Chas v'Shalom, Chas and Kaddish, right? That rope that's resilient down here Thursday night and goes up to the top. But we know that Zelu Umazeh Asalikim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created one thing in parallel to the other. Whatever exists in the side of Kedusha must necessarily exist in the side of Tumah. But the chevel de Tumah doesn't lead anywhere.
Right.
The chevel de Tumah doesn't lead anywhere. It just brings you mamish. Even if a person scales it all the way to the top, it's not even a trap door. It doesn't open up. It's just sheker.
There's
nothing
downwards to like a black hole.
Okay, it's all a metaphor. It's a mashal. If you would like to think of it that way, you could think of it as a chevel downward.
Maybe it goes to God, because behind all the darkness of Tumah there is still the bria of creation.
So let's. Yes. We're going to touch on that a bit about the possibility of using an experience of darkness, tshuva, which we're going to talk about, hevel, where everything switches. Yes, but right now, just from the hishtadlus standpoint, a person should always see kiviyachol in front of him, these two ropes dangling down any given moment. Which one do I choose to be connected with? By the way. And that's the oimik of what Rebbe Nachman is saying. But again, we have to unpack all this. I apologize. It exists in a state of bilbo these days, so I'm trying to get out some words of clarity. But please forgive me. I'm not in that headspace. But we have a lot to get to. The chiddush of what Rebbe Nachman is saying about regret is that usually we think of the chevel de kedusha or the chevel de tuma manifesting themselves respectively in very concretized choices. Let's say a person has a choice to make. So a person literally has a choice to make. Am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And it's clear to us, everybody knows, you have a Jewish heart, you have a conscience. One is a chevel de kedusha, one's bringing me to where I need to go. The other, like Rebbe Lelu is suggesting, it takes me down into the black hole, however you want to visualize it. But the Rebbe says, even if you don't have a choice in front of you per se, where is your ratzon at? Even if you don't have a way to concretize that, a person, mamish, you could be involved in the most mundane of things, where you don't even have the capacity, let's say you're not even waiting online in a store where you could say a kapitel tehillim and nobody will notice, and why not? Not even that, where you're mamish oisik in this worldliness, which is a pretty big percentage point of many of our lives. So you're not waiting in line, you're actively doing the shopping. You're actively doing the shopping. And we know how much longer it takes us to do shopping than our wives. Again, for some of us, it depends. But it takes the men a long time. I always tell my wife, just you go, it takes 10 minutes. For me, it takes like 2 hours. Now, if I would go enough, it would also take me the 10 minutes. But you're actively engaged in trying to locate the kruta, the soup nut somewhere. So I can't engage myself in that minute with something mamish. Kedusha. Can be argued that going shopping on behalf of one's family is also an active way of engaging. But says the Rebbe, breathing, which is something active that expresses where my energy is focused toward, is a big avodah, a huge avodah. Let's see how he lays this out. So again, v'hine yeshnei chavolim. There are just 2 ropes dangling down. There's a chevel de kedusha, and ukenegda there's a chevel de tuma. V'abechira chavshes. Mamash bechira is so free, it's unbelievable. No matter what a person is stuck in, because it's not about being perfect all the time. And we're going to learn, maybe next week or the week after, not everyone, and this is based on, it's Rebbe Nachman, but Rebbe Dessler has a big section of Rebbe Dessler's machshava called Kuntras HaBechira, is based on Rebbe Nachman in Torah 72, which maybe we'll learn inside. Everybody has his or her own nekudas HaBechira. But the bechira is chavshes. Again, to one person that might mean abstaining from this and this act. For the other person, it might mean checking himself into a rehab because he cannot abstain from this act. You understand? Every person has an akudas habechira vis-a-vis where that person is. But bechira chavshes. Mi shemekadesh atzmai, a person that's mekadesh him or herself, mikasher atzmai bechevel de kedusha. You are on the rope of kedusha. You're climbing that ladder that takes you mamish to eternity, to emes, to the enveloping embrace of the infinite. But the hepech chas v'shalom, the hepech is also true. At any given moment, chas v'shalom, mishemetama atzmai, in whatever way, mikasher atzmai bechevel de toma. Now the person is not holding onto the rope of Kedusha, he's holding onto the rope of Tumah, very famous from the Gra in his Pirish to Mishlei, where the Gra really says it very clear, but Rebbe Nachman is reflecting the same idea. There's no in-between. Right? There's no in-between. The Gra says at any given moment you're either going up or you're going down. There is no in-between. Life is that intense. Yiddishkeit is that intense. I think we spoke 2 shiurim ago about the power of each and every one of our own spiritual choices, even irrespective of how many people we think or we think we are not affecting. Right? It's a really intense thing to be a Yid. So at any given moment, we're either holding on and climbing one rope or chas v'shalom the other rope, either up or down. Vihine. So now the Rebbe brings back the hevel. We were speaking about the chevel, but now we speak about the hevel. Vihine, hanoya, the groaning, the krechzing, va'anacha, and the sighing of a yid, hu bechinas misa beguf v'nefesh, is an aspect of death. How much an aspect of death? Beguf, the Gemara in Brachas tells us, anacha sheveres gufa shel adam. Simply, and there's even a manda amar there that says chetzi guf shel adam, but and the other manda amar says the whole guf. Sheveres gufa shel adam. It's proven from Psukim. A person sighs and it just breaks the whole body. But of a nefesh gamkein, it's also true that there's an aspect of the departure of the soul, mamish. Ki yadua ma shekasa, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Toisiv rucham yigva'un. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you Toisiv rucham, you collect their spirit, like Miloshan Ma'asef, right, to gather in, or based on Azar Kadosh, Rebbe Nachman, Torah Samach Vav, and there's Rabbeinu Yerucham that's quoting a Ramban also, based on Azar Kadosh, that right before a person leaves the world, it's a very deep thing, they get an extra infusion of soul. Masha'in came what they didn't have their whole entire lives. And this Rebbe Nachman speaks about this in the context of Elisha getting Pishnayim. When Eliyahu Hanavi was nifter, he got Pishnayim, he got double the spirit of Eliyahu Hanavi, because in that moment came down into Eliyahu 2 times his ruach. There's a ruach de le'ela and a ruach de l'sata. That's why Noach. As the Mefarshim explained, there's a Noach de le'ela and a Noach de l'sata. Anytime that by the tzaddikim it's called out twice, right? Abraham, Yaakov, Yaakov got called twice? I don't know. Avram, right? And others. So there's a ruach above and a ruach below. How does the ruach below leave? Especially by tzaddikim? The ruach from above leaves, the ruach from below, which is in the body, leaves when the ruach mil'ela, in those last moments of a person's life, descends legamri into this world. And it's so magnetic and it's so attractive, it's so potent, that it draws up the lower ruach with it. And together, it's a very beautiful conception, together, arm in arm, they rise to the upper realm. So that's also based on this pasuk. The Zohar Kadosh says, "Toisef," not miloshen ma'asef, because that's a simpler understanding. You gather their ruach and you leave them like a gvia, like a corpse. But on the contrary, toisef rucham, when you bring an extra infusion of spirit mile'ela down into the body milasata, then they connect and then they go up together. 2 different ways of understanding the pasuk.
Is that the ruach de le'ela? Is that the potential and what they can be? Is that what the ruach de le'ela is?
It belongs.
Their true self of who they could be. Because it says that when the after 120, they say this is who you could have been, and the tzar that you experienced by not have reached that. So when the ruach and the ruach have to go up together,
that's why by real tzaddikim there's no difference between life and death.
Look to your left, look to your right, and what's this? This is really you.
Right. This is the real you. It can very well be. It's open. It's open for reflection on what that might mean. Just parenthetically, I once had a remez about this idea, and the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says "Dalafnei mi'ata oimed," right? And of course, it's speaking about Hashem. You should know before whom you stand, and the Mishnah continues, "Lefnei Melech Malcham Lacham HaKadosh Baruch Hu." But I once thought of a remez, a person should know, "Lefnei mi'ata oimed." At any given moment, you're standing in front of mi'ata, who you really are. "Dalafnei mi'ata." A person has to be very careful that you're always standing in front of the ideal version, right? Are we going to align ourselves with the ideal? It's a little bit a remez to this. Yeah, maybe. Right? So now, Beguf, we already said the Gemara in Brachas, Anacha Shaveres Gufa Shal Adam, Uve Nefesh Gam Kein, Ki Adua Mashikosav Toisef, Rucham Yigva'un. So Rebbe Nachman explains here, based on the tradition of the Zohar Kadosh, Ki Kaida Misa, what happens first, Ni Toisef Rucham. We have a tremendous infusion of Ruach, Vazai Yigva'un. Says the Rebbe, Kamai Kein HaNoyach Va'anacha. Look at what a sigh is. When we take a look at a person first breathes in very deeply, that's like the taisif ruach of above. This actually fits very nicely with your Torah, right? That what is it? Right? It's the potential you, meaning it's regret over the way that I haven't been living in alignment with mi'ata oimed. Right, so it works very nicely with your Torah. That you're breathing in. What's the breathing in? The breathing in is, I could have been so much more. I am so much more. I'm breathing in a very deep ruach that's connected to my ruach de le'ela of who I really am, be'etzem. And then what happens? We let it out. So says the Rebbe, what's the letting out? So he says the breathing in hibachinas is an aspect of toisef rucham. That's like right before a person leaves the world. It's an infusion of ruach. He has like an added extra bit of air. And then 1 second later, he releases it all, and it's like his body is emptied out of air to the point that if he wouldn't take the next breath, that's it. And that's how people mamish die. They take their last breath. It's even metaphorically, that's how we refer to a person who dies. He took his last breath. Yeah, that's what it is. So based on what the Rebbe is saying, the nitoisiv ruach of the extra breath in is clarity into who I really am and the way that I really want to be living. And then letting that breath out is like a little bit the misa of the old me, and the readiness to become new. Because there has to be a misa. There has to be a bechina of shedding the past and then moving into a brighter future. That's the death. Yeah, the death of the death of the ego, the death of the previous self. And this is, I seem to remember, Rebbe Nachman of Likutei Moharan explains that it's a big inyan when a person's zeicha to go to a mikvah, to take a very, very deep breath before you go under. And then Rebbe Nachman says, when you go under, hold that breath until mamish you're done, until you cannot breathe anymore. Rebbe Nachman says at that point, and Rebbe Nachman is not the only one that speaks about the mikvah in this way, al pi Kabbalah, it's connected to the concept of the womb. The womb, not getting into the whole thing now. Mamish like a womb. You're not wearing any clothing. You're surrounded by water on all sides. Mamish like a womb. You could even adopt the fetal position if you want to really embody it. And then says Rebbe Nachman, when you come up and take that first breath, he says it's an aspect of the pasuk Leiv Tahar Berali Elikim Beruach Nachin Chadesh Beker. He says you're mamish born fresh. Mamish born fresh. So the way that Rebbe Nachman describes it is you're letting out the sigh, and that's a bechina of misa. So even when you're not in a mikvah, it's as if you have, because then you take the next breath. So Rebbe Nachman says you can play this whole thing out in a mikvah setting, meaning you first take in that deep breath, which is the sigh, and then you go down underneath, and then when you come up, you let it out, and then you take another breath, and you're reborn. You're reborn. So this is the process that we take in kedusha.
Maybe that's what the Gemara was talking about. When it says that a sigh kills the body.
Chevel says guf shel adam. Yes.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah. Very, very likely.
I wonder though what it means shchatzi.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about.
Fits in with your shopping example. You get frustrated. You want
yes, exactly. There's a lot to sigh about there. Yeah.
And instead, you could
That's
just
the
be,
Avodah.
instead you could be
She's killing you.
just keep yourself calm.
No, on the contrary, you could channel your frustration.
You
Frustration is a holy thing.
Or you
Meaning,
could do it the other
I'm
way.
feeling frustrated now, so I think, what do I want to feel frustrated over now? I want to feel frustrated over the fact that I thought I wanted to be in this and that place, and now it's taking me so long? Or do I say, is this something to really be frustrated about? How many other things do I have to feel frustrated about? Should I? That's a way of elevating it, channeling it to Kedusha. So now the Rebbe says a super scary thing, because he didn't just bring in the words hevel and chevel for nothing. We know in Remez, but even in Drushim from Chazal, chinaki, that Chazal are okay with switching letters that belong to the same category. We know that there are 5 different areas of speech that are rooted in the mouth. The hey moitzais hapeh, 5 different areas. There are the palate letters and the tongue letters and the teeth letters and the lip letters and so on, and the throat letters. And so hey and ches are both throat letters. And so you can switch them. So they can be used, zayin dal is ashrats and beis and mem and pei and so on, are the lip letters, chulei. And so the Rebbe says these two things are connected. You want to know how to connect yourself to the chevel de kedusha? It's got to be hevel de kedusha. It's got to be a holy sigh, holy regret, holy realignment of will. Chas v'shalom, if a person is sighing in the opposite way, that a person really wants to break free from the conscience, and a person wants to do all these things that he knows that he shouldn't do and can't do for one reason or another, because of moral constraints or practical constraints or religious constraints, and a person sighs over that, says the Rebbe, whoa, that's connecting in that moment to the chevel of Tumah, chas v'shalom. Let's read it inside. V'hine mi shemisaneach, a person that sighs, v'na, and he groans, al averis shebiyadai, that he has averis, that a person hasn't been living properly. V'roitza lasha b'tshuva, that's the key word, roitza. In this moment, he's expressing his desire, lasha b'tshuva, I want to change, I don't want to keep on living this way. And he can't even express it in words. A sigh is beyond words. It touches so deeply, it's so overwhelming. I can't even, maybe I'm ashamed to put it into words. I'm ashamed to come to Hashem. All I can do, beini uvein atzmi, is just to sigh. Azai, says the Rebbe, look how easy it is. But anachazu, with one sigh, not big avodas, gilgul sheleg, 1,000 fasts, one sigh, hu nigva v'nesav min arasha hebiyadai, he dies, so to speak, away from the ra that a person was literally, he could say, I think a reference to the imagery of a rope, right? That's biyadai. That part of you dies away, and in that moment, v'nidbak el hakadusha, you are now realigned. Even though, our maisim have to be fixed up, and practically there are so many things that we need to apply, and shuva, of course, contains 3 segments, and so on and so forth. All that needs to be done. But in terms of your alignment, in terms of your direction that you're facing, in terms of where your energy is, you're attached to the chevel de kedusha. One sigh. One sigh, pile playim, and the opposite is also true. It's hard to imagine a person who's sighing over all the good deeds that he did, wishing that he hadn't done them. I'm sure there was never such a Jew.
I think it's maybe a Hochstoß. Like, I'm sure he only does it because he's not really by himself. Like, there's something going on.
Sure. It's not the real him. It's
true.
for sure not the real him.
Yeah.
But we know that Avera Gereres Avera, and a person can spend his whole life not being the real him. It's for sure not him. Right? And that's a crucial point. And I want to get back to this, which we'll speak a little bit more deeply in 2 minutes. I want to get back to that. But first, the remez. The zehu, and this is how the Rebbe always helps us understand the pnimius of Torah, and he gives us a good way to remember all these teachings. Whenever you see this pasuk in Mishlei, in Kailas, you'll never see it again the same way. Yesh hevel. Hainu hevel pe me'anoya v'anocha. Says the Rebbe, it's referring not to some vanity or frustration, but he's referring to literal breathing. Shu na'u misanech. There's one kind of sigh that produces the effect of yesh tzadikim, that are righteous people, that their sigh shetoyin al rishonos. Why would a tzaddik sigh, chas v'shalom? That he regrets all the good things that he did. V'yotza hevel mi piyam v'anacha. Yesh hevel. They breathe it out. And that causes that these tzaddikim magia aleim k'maiser rishayim. In that minute, they switch and they're connected now, chas v'shalom, to the chevel de sitra achra, to the chevel of the rishayim. But of course, midah tovim ruba, it's that much easier and it's that much more common. V'yesh rishayim chas v'shalom, there are those that are not aligned in their maisim. She'no'im u'ma'anchim, but they have one moment of a real expression of ratzon tov. They want to change. U'me'ahevel she'yotzim mipiyam, as a result of this sigh, in that moment, magia leim k'maiser hatzadikim. They realign themselves with the essence of who they are and what they always ever wanted, what they were always ever looking for.
The pasuk in Mitzrayim, v'yonchu yavoy l'kosh, v'yonchu is one of the V'tal Shabbosim lifnei Elokim. V'tal Shabbosim actually says it's V'tal Shabbosim.
Mamish. Lifnei Elokim, like up a rope, all the way back.
It's chuseh.
All the way back. Ki nifsakim me'atuma, in that 1 minute, they become detached from that element of tuma, v'nidbakin ela kedusha.
It's interesting.
They become connected to the side of kedusha.
It's interesting what he commented, because it also shows that Hakadosh Baruch Hu saw at that point, they're not yet in the 50th Shara Tov. If they can still call up to me, if they can still reach me, it means they're not gone.
That's right. Hakadosh Baruch Hu sees them where they are, and don't forget, Mitzrayim is not just physical Mitzrayim; it's Eretz Haaretz v'chulei. V'nitzak v'yanchu mikoitzer ruach. Right? Unbelievable. So this aligns. I want to speak a little bit more deeply in a minute, but just one nakuda. This aligns with the Ma'amar Chazal that tells us yesh kaina olamai b'sha achas. There's a way of being kaina, an experience of olam haba, mamish b'sha achas. So I was going to say that in Nigla it's b'sha achas. In the Zohar Kadosh it's b'riga chada, b'shata chada, b'riga chada. In 1 minute, everything can change. So what goes on in that minute where everything changes? What's the MS? Nothing. Meaning to say, it's revealed that this is who you always were all along. Right? Nothing changes, which is the deep side. Again, it's a huge side, you're not getting to the whole thing now, which is the side of what Chazal tell us, that if a person does tshuva me'ahava, what happens to their averis? How could that be? The strangest thing ever. right? A person mamish, we're talking about literal averis, some even egregious and having harmful results. There's even a Taisus that asks whether tshuva can be done for something that produces something so practical in this world as a mamzer, and there's a Shitas Rabbi Yitzchak over there that says even so, or machtis a rabbim, persons that a person that's machtis, or a person that steals from the rabbim doesn't know where to give what's it called, right? Or a person that steals and doesn't know how to return. V'chule, there are very pragmatic, practical things that need to be rectified. So how could it be? How could it be that a person does tshuva me'ahava? What happens? They're very averis, not just that they're wiped away, they become mitzvahs. And the oimek of it is that a person is mevarer in a moment of tshuva me'ahava, total dvekas, that we spoke about last week, devek, a person really gets to that place, shedding the ego, recognizing what life is all about. It's mivurar, it's clarified in that moment that all he was ever looking for all along was Elokus. All he was ever looking for was that feeling of attachment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connection to something greater than him. All he was looking for was connection, to reach out, to feel love, to give love, v'chule. And it was never about the places, the arenas where he thought he was finding it. It was about Elokus all along, the emes.
It's never what it's about.
Huh?
It's never what it's about.
That right, that's never what it's about. So when a person sighs this sigh and looks back over his life and says like, that wasn't me. That wasn't what I wanted. That wasn't what I was looking for. So Memela, it's clarified that
it's a schuyas.
It's mamish zechuyas. Why?
Yeah.
Because very, very, very deep down, that was also kedusha. That was also kedusha. Yesh kanay lama b'sha achas. Very, very deep. It's connected to the avodah of Yom Kippur, getting to Ne'ilah. Not getting to that now, but the tzaddikim explain that yesh kanay lama b'sha achas is Rosh Tevis Akiva. The Heligar Rabbi Akiva, who spends 40 years of his life not connected to the chevel, the kedusha, so much so that the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva didn't just not like kedusha. He said he would have said, "Show me a Talmud Chacham and I'll bite him like a donkey." It was, you can't even imagine such an adverse relationship with Torah. Right, maybe very deeply is going to cipher. Don't forget, by the way, when the Svarim point this out, also Rabbi Yaakov Shechter says in Osef Hamarim, and the Mei Shilach makes reference to this also in Parshas Balak. Don't forget that this is the very same Rabbi Akiva that later on was the one who darshaned the S of Es Hashem Lekeichem Tira to include Talmidei Chacham.
Oh, wow.
This is the very
True.
Rabbi Akiva that said, "Show me a Talmid Chacham, I'll bite him like a donkey." That maybe, like you're saying, when it's flipped, when the kedusha is revealed, he becomes the strongest to laharbes Talmidei Chachamim, to darshan an S that nobody else would touch, right? Because that's his inyan, that's his nekuda. But again, this is Rabbi Akiva. Yesh kainai lama b'sha achas. A person can go 40 years of his life not connected to the chevel, the kedusha, and in one moment of awakening, a person sighs and a person says, "I want to change."
How's one going into this sigh? As in, it sounds like it's not the end of a process of tshuva.
You have to
It
sigh
sounds like
more.
the beginning
It's the
of
very
process.
beginning. It's the first.
So, like, what was all? It seems like Rabbi Akiva was very fortunate. He happened to have this moment of revelation, which changed his whole life. Like, people often say, "Oh, I wish I had like one of those like life-changing moments." Like, how do you?
I personally believe that everybody will. I believe that everybody will. The question is whether they hear it. You know, there's a famous story from the Baal Shem Tov. I forget whether it's a Mishnah. I think it is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. B'chol yom yotze baskel mihar chayrev. That says, but that's different because in Avos it says Oilai me'al baina shel Torah. I'm talking about a different. I think it's a Tana D'Belio, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's similar to that Mishnah. It's Tana D'Belio that says Shuvu banim shoivavim. Every day from Har Chayrev comes out Shuva Banim Shavavim. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov, big deal. What's the point of a baskel calling everybody back that nobody could hear?
Anyway.
Says the Baal Shem Tov, everybody hears it in one form or another. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is always calling us back. The question isn't whether we have these moments. The question is whether we have the Siyata D'Shmaya to recognize that it is a moment like this. And I think that some people will go 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, let's say 60 years of their life and not feel that they had that moment of awakening But who knows what on their 69th birthday, when they're Veit, they're just celebrating their birthday the way that they were when they were 30, with the same shtuyot and silly jokes, and then they chap, like, hold on one second, life is progressing. Don't forget, a person does tshuva on his deathbed. His whole entire 119 years of his life spent in total tumah, everything is fixed, everything's wiped away. Don't forget, tshuva mamish work. So, I just say, hang in there, hang in there. You never ever know when it's going to be your moment. And sometimes it happens sweetly, and it becomes just, a person gets a giloy. And chas v'shalom, sometimes it happens where a person gets shaken up. A person hits rock bottom. A person has their back up against the wall, and they're forced to recognize the reality that life is a little bit more serious than I've been taking it.
Are we saying this is just
Pass the water, please.
What I've been understanding is that this is a moment where a change of direction.
Thank you so much.
180 degrees, and now you
Thank
can
you.
start living your life as the real you. But are you also saying that you literally have, like, all your areas are gone, or that comes from
Lav dafka. I don't think Rebbe Nachman is saying that. I think Rebbe Nachman is saying there's a fundamental energy shift. It's not about, and this really is what comes out of this Torah also, which is very powerful, is that it's less about, and of course there are dargas and dargas, there's the chitzonius and the panemius, both are important, guf and neshama, but when we really want to know where a person is be'emes, it's not about where they are, it's about what direction they're facing. And that's an incredibly powerful thing, because a lot of people are withheld, and a lot of people have challenges from accessing, from implementing all their she'ifas and ruchnias. Everybody here wants to be a Talmid Chacham. Everybody here would love to sit and learn the whole day. Everybody here, and we have limiting factors. We're humans, right? But the question is, imagine if a person is sitting and learning 3 Siddharim, but inside, chas v'shalom, they're busy sighing the whole day because they want to be everywhere but the Beis Medrash. So it's not for me or for you to judge, but we could understand how in Shemayim, maybe the person that can snatch 5 minutes, a little bit bekashi in between clients, because he's a doctor that starts very early in the morning and sees clients all the way till night. What can he do? This is his living, and on the contrary, he's busy doing chesed the whole day, but he would really love to learn. And the whole day he's busy sighing, saying, Rebbeinu Dam L'Koila, if only you would give me just a little bit of a break, I would right away sit. Who knows in Shemayim which person, I don't know. And I'm sure both of them are valued for what they each contribute. And bevadai, the person that's busy sighing because he wants to be outside the Beis Medrash, but Panemius, he also wants to be in the Beis Medrash, right? There's all calculations, and they're all true and good, but there are different layers of it. But I don't think that Rebbe Nachman is saying over here that all of a sudden, this is tshuva. This is not tshuva. Rebbe Nachman in Torah Vav speaks about the panemius of what tshuva really is. And of course, we know from the Rambam and Sugyas and Halacha that there are stages of actual tshuva, vidoy, azivus achet, and so on. Here we're just speaking about the most fundamental directionality of the human soul. Where are you facing? And the Rebbe says that changes everything. That changes everything.
That basically you have the same opportunity of hevel, and now another question is, what are you doing with this hevel? Are you going to become a tzaddik from it? As in, are you going to improve your life, or are you going to go down? Basically, it's like you're taking it in. Now what are you going to do? Now,
why would you say that?
Because it says that yesh hevel, and then it says I don't know what the rest of the passage says because it doesn't have the whole thing, but then it says meaning the same hevel.
Interesting.
That same moment is a choice. And we're talking about choices, right?
Interesting. I would say it a little bit differently. I would say that it's not the choice after having taken the breath in, because presumably at that point you already have your intentionality. But I would speak about the capacity for regret. The capacity for regret. Right? That's the hevel. Because the hevel that comes after that is already an outgrowth of that initial experience. But that's what I would suggest. Yesh hevel is that, you're right. Tzadikim yelchu bom u'poshim mikol shemam. It's the same thing. But what is the thing? The thing is the capacity to look back and to say, I wish I would have done that differently. And each of us have the opportunity to say that at any given moment. And again, it doesn't necessarily require any pragmatic shift in the moment of where you are. You could be literally sitting in your car in traffic and you think about previous experiences and you say, Gavalt, like if only I knew then what I know now. And it's not either, by the way, a matter of beating ourselves up. On the contrary, it's such a beautiful thing. I can rectify my current positioning by shining the light of consciousness on the darkness of the past. It's not about, I'm such a lo yutzlach, and if only, and what's going to be with all that wasted time.
It's not regretting.
It's not regretting. It's not feeling badly about the past, or right. It's not feeling guilty about the past, or ashamed about the past. But it's about saying, "Wow, like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Where was
asking
I?
yourself, what was I thinking? As in, where did I want to go with this?
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you have the answer, I was probably thinking X. Okay, I'm not such a bad person. But let's
Right. Especially based on what we said before. If you dig very deeply into the experience, what was I thinking? I wanted Kiras Elokim. I wanted eternity. I wanted infinity. And I tried to find it in a billion different ways, but nothing ever satisfied me. So that's not it. So what is it? It is taking Yiddishkeit to the next level. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that Yiddishkeit to the next level means linearly. Means I have to do more. Quantitatively, I have to add another Seder, I have to start another Sefer, I have to, daven this much longer Shemana Esrei, and people forget that Yiddishkeit is not just about, length, so to speak. There's width, there's depth. I always say, when Chazal referred to the Gemara, or not really Chazal, Rishonim, as the Yam HaTalmud, the ocean of Talmud. So a lot of people think it's called the ocean of Talmud because it's vast, right? Rechava mina yam is a pasuk, like vast.
It's very close. It's very close.
Yes.
But it's deep.
It's deep. That's why it's called the Yam HaTalmud. Not because you could see until the horizon, because it's so deep. So you take one line of Gemara, and it doesn't necessarily, taking the next step in Yiddishkeit doesn't need to mean quantitatively adding. There's a time and place for that too. Of course, we expand the shetach. Now there's more within which to go deep. But it could just mean going qualitatively deeper. That's the whole thing of the Lost Princess, or those of the chevel that have the sefer, right? The whole thing is the quality is missing, not the quantity. Going deep in Yiddishkeit, not going, the breadth and the length.
What do you do about that?
Goes in, deeper, and that's where you find the nachas ruach. Because otherwise, a person will say, "Listen, life is miserable as it is. Because if I'm continuing to engage in these lowly, activities that I know aren't satisfying me, v'chulei, I'm not going to be happy there. And if I'm being honest, I don't really enjoy Yiddishkeit all that much. I don't feel that Yiddishkeit is giving me what it's giving me, right? Because I don't know. I know what Shabbos is, and Shabbos is right. So what's the answer? The answer is no. You don't know what Shabbos is yet. Take a step deeper into Shabbos. Right? Transform your experience of what Shabbos is. Go deeper, add more quality. Fine. Says the Rebbe V'haklal, let's read this. He sums it up. Ki azeh l'umas zeh. Everything is a system of parallels. And it's good to visualize. It's like a meditation. Have these two ropes dangling in front of you all the time. And all of us at this point in our lives, all of us already know where the left side rope leads. We know we know it. Rav Kook says, we're cruel to ourselves. We can't even blame anybody else. We already know that it's going to be miserable. It's not going to make us happy. Whatever it is, fill in the blank. For some, it's food. For some, without getting into all of it, it's not getting me where I need to get. I'm going to be miserable. So I need to not be cruel to myself, and finally to just avail myself the lifestyle that I know is going to bring me satisfaction. It's like Chazal describe it, it's the derech arucha shiksar. It's a much longer road, but it will get me where I need to go, as opposed to the road that looks ksara, but she arucha ma'ayde, and it's endless. And yesh leim mana roitza mesayim ein adam meis v'chatzi tavase biyadai. Maybe there's a connection there to the anacha sheveres chatzi guf shel adam. I don't know. I have to think more about that. Right? Ein adam meis v'chatzi tavase biyadai v'chulei. That it's not going to get me where I need to go. And so, and again, I'm not saying muster to anybody. I'm primarily speaking to myself. It's so much easier to say than to do. You know why? Because I say it for a living. This is literally what I'm paid to say. And it's easy to say, and I know all the Torahs. Applying it, super difficult. Super difficult. But if we don't learn the teachings, it's going to be much harder to ever get there. The start is to saturate ourselves with these visuals, with these images, with these teachings, and then we have a hope. So the Rebbe says, Zelu umazeh, we'll finish now. We need, says the Rebbe, to draw life from either one of these chavalim. At any given moment in time, every single Jew is either drawing life from one energy or the other. Where are you facing? And the minute, based on the sighing, that we disconnect, thank you so much for coming, Reb Zev, thank you. We disconnect from one rope, you immediately, because like the Gra says, there is no in between, you're immediately connected to the chevel to Kedusha. Al Kain, says the Rebbe, therefore, always comes down to a practical eitzah. Toiv lehargel es atzmoi lisaneach al maisav she'inam toivim. By Breslovers, you see all the time, they're sighing. The real Breslovers, the real, all the time. But in such a holy way, they're not broken people. They're full of joy, but they understand the rachmanus of Hashem, that He set up the system in such a way that something so simple as a small little sigh can just change your life every minute. Just a sigh. Realign your ruts and remind yourself who you really are. That's why it's not beating up on yourself. On the contrary, it's reminding yourself, this is who I really am. This is what I really want. I'm Kadosh, and I'm connected to the chevel de Kedusha. Yaakov chevel nachalasai. V'lich soif, and to yearn. V'lish stoikek, and to long. B'soikef anchasai, in the depth of that groan. Lashav Lashem Yisbarach. That's all I want. And life is tough, and I'm not a malach, and the human experience is beset by challenges and obstacles and difficulties and kashiyim rabim. Many, 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 many challenges. But this is where I'm facing. This is where my heart and my mind are directed. Because through this one sigh, the power of just one tiny little krechs, everything changes. You reconnect yourself to the chevel that's connected to mamish, your essence, which is strung all the way through all the olamais of Asiya, and then higher to Yitzira, Bria, Atzilas, all the way back up really in Bria to the Kisei HaKavod and beyond, to the one that sits on the Kisei HaKavod, to Kutchabrichu B'chvayda V'atzmai. In one sigh of looking back and saying, like, this is not me. This is not me. This is not who I want to be. This is not who I am. Nifsak mechevel de tuma, and niskasher bechevel de kedusha. And then he just quickly really reviews the teaching, summarizes. It's Rebbe Nachman speaking. Matzasi b'ksaviyad hachaverim me'inin zeh. Ksaviyad haverim is all the teachings from Rebbe Nachman that were written down by the Hasidim before Rebbe Nachman got there. Rebbe Nachman only came to Rebbe Nachman much later in Rebbe Nachman's life, the last 8 years, I believe. And Rebbe Nachman started his Chasidus when he was bar mitzvah, which was the same day he got married. Right, so that's when he started attracting Hasidim to him, many of whom were decades older than him, including Rav Aaron, the Rav of Breslov, who was in his 80s when he came close to Rebbe Nachman, bar mitzvah bacher, and he mamish was mavatal himself like Gamri. The Rebbe was something else. Mamish, he was young, but he was something else completely. So Rebbe Nachman came later on, and he found manuscripts that were written. So again, this was a teaching that Rebbe Nachman was already teaching in his youth, and so he found this written in the manuscripts of the Chaverim, Umuvur Sham Beber Yoser, and over there it's written even more. Megoida Ma'alas Yikras Hanacha de Gedusha. How precious, beyond powerful, how precious it is to Hashem. This Yiddish krachs. Ki Umuvur Sham, it's written there. Listen to this one. Sha'anacha shema'aneach ha'adam al avinoisav. This that a person sighs and crechses and groans over chas v'shalom averis, or just is limited hasaga and perception in avodas Hashem, hu yoser toiv mikama sigufim v'taniyos, is more powerful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than many fasts and sigufim. Now
honest,
again,
because it's honest.
Right. So primarily, I would say because it's potentially more honest, meaning I have a hard time understanding how, and he explains it even, and of course everything is relative, but if a person mamish fasts and a person fasts, the whole day you're sighing. I mean, the whole day it's an experience of sighing. Right.
Fast could build the ego.
Yes.
And I'm faster.
Yes. So that would be
way more powerful than any man.
Because it's sincere, right? So that's what all the Nevi'im, Yeshayo, Yirmiyahu, Kiru levavchem va'al b'gdeichem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I don't want to see you rip your garments, right? and the Gemara in Tainus tells us that the Darshanim would say this on the Taniyas Tzibor. That's not the Iker. The Iker is not the fasting. The Iker is in the heart. But over here he brings a different explanation. Ki Tainus ena mishaber rak haguf levad. The Tainus just affects the body. Right, or again, using that word, potentially can stay shitri, can stay just on the surface. Aval ba'anacha mishaber kol haguf v'gam machlef hasanefesh v'achiyah shaloi mirat l'toiv. It can actually impact the soul, and it can change our energy. Where are we connected to? Ki hevel shala adam hu chevel, and that's the way to remember it. Hevel is chevel, right? The hey and the ches are interchangeable. Hevel is connecting me to the chevel, hamekasher haneshama l'makom sharsha. We didn't have time to go really into the oimik of this, but this is what the breath is. The breath is the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed from in himself, right, from which is the one side of the chevel, into Adam Rishon, the Zohar Kodesh quoted by the Baal Tanya in Parak Beis, man de nafach mitoiche nafach, the one who blew, right, which is Hashem blowing of a yipach ba'ap of nishmas chayim mitoiche nafach. Where does breath come from? The center of the person, the essence of the person. So that means that, what's that?
He said it from the essence of God?
Yes, right, lamashal.
Right.
So it says the Baal Tanya, it means that Hashem blew the neshama into Adam Rishon mitoiche, from mamish, whatever this means, from Hashem's, his essence, mitoich vav. Machshavat chila mamish, all of these different words, right? From the essence, from the keser, from the earliest will, we're bound up. Yisrael Allah b'machshavat chila, reishis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu from that place breathes the spirit into man. And so it's dafka the experience of ruach that can reconnect us to that chevel. The chas v'shalom of a person is connected to the ruach that's not kol haneshama, kol haneshima, tahalal kol neshima, that a person is not living in a way where every breath is focused, conscious, alive, aware, but by a person just taking in a new breath and releasing, dying away from the old, you reconnect yourself to the man de nafach mitoiche nafach. You connect yourself to the place where the neshama and the neshima is connected to, and that's the hevel that's connected to the Yaakov chevel nachalase. Ki hevel shala adam hu chevel hamekasher haneshama lemekayim sharsha l'toiv chas v'shalom elehepech. And so again, the deepest thing, and this is referencing Rabbi Yaakov, what you mentioned earlier, is that the chevel de sitra achra is really a mirage. We touched on it when we said that potentially all of a person's averas can be turned into zechuyas. So crazily enough, it turns out, I'll pee this, that you could have a person that was climbing the ladder, and this is where it doesn't really align with the vision of going down. So again, but it's all Mishal. A person was, let's say, climbing the ladder of Tumah, and then in there, if he mamish sighs and he rectifies, and he, let's say, goes through the experience of tshuva me'ava, whatever that entails, when he flips to the other rope, he doesn't start at the bottom. He keeps going. Because, but Panemius, there's just one rope. There's the story that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling through us. There's just Yediyah. We mentioned this earlier, right? I think a number of times now, because it sits at the core of all of Chassidus, all of Kabbalah. It's this, right? It's the awareness that really be'etzem ein oid mavad. There's nothing but God. And the whole thing is finding your place in that and understanding that through Bechira, utilizing Bechira, making the next right step, doing tshuva, memela, we can come to activate, to manifest the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu was already telling this story of Kirvas Elokim through me. But it's on me to take that next step. That's where my Bechira is. Do I do tshuva now? Tshuva me'ahava? Can I rectify the past? In which case I realize that really the past was already ever rectified, in as much as my tshuva was also part of the story. Bechule, not going to get into the whole Yediyah Bechira the conversation now, but that's what it is. That's what tshuva is, the side of being able to realize, oh, there was only ever one rope. I thought I was climbing this rope. I was really climbing the rope of Kedusha anyway. And so really, and that goes back to what we said, there really is only one hevel. It's the oimik of it. Tzadikim yelchu bam, and upaishim, all the while that they're paishim, yikashlu bam. What is the chevel? Hevel. That's the ruach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed into man. And so reduced down to the most simple approach, what we're learning about here is Bechira. And that's the simple, right, reduced outside of fancy concepts and hevel and chevel and a pasuk and kayalas and Rebbe Nachman, just basic. Hashem gave you life. Hashem breathed spirit into you, life into you. What are you going to do with it? Because it's one chevel. It's one hevel. It's the life force that is always bound up to the divine. Now, chas v'shalom, a person can misinterpret what life is all about and spend a whole lot of time climbing up the chevel de tuma. It doesn't really exist because it's all life. You're connected to Hashem. Why? Because Chaim, you're alive, and you're connected to the source of Chaim. But then, if in one moment, whenever that moment is, as Hashem, we should carry on in this moment, mitzvah, gereris mitzvah, and so on. You keep on climbing higher and higher. You recognize, wow, that wasn't what life was all about in the first place. So then everything switches. And you recognize that whole experience of the darkness that I went through, it was all learning. It was all learning. It was all part of the process. That's the secret of Malchus Beis David. And Malchus Beis David also has a long, dark history. I think we mentioned this Thursday night, right? Kupish al-Shratzim, whole long, dark history. And then the site of David HaMelech of Tshuva is again, Yesh Kainai Lame B'Sha'ach. When that's switched and when that's flipped and Evan Ma'asu Aboinim becomes Haisel Rosh Pina, how did it get to the Rosh Pina? Was it Evan Ma'asu Aboinim? Because there was progress made there. Because you climbed up the rope of Tuma. There was progress. Progress. How could there have been progress? David Basheva is the lowliest thing, even though Chazal say, Kol Mishama David Chata Elena Elataya, etc. But on the surface, the answer is because Me'es Hashem Haisazais. He niflas be'inenu. Niflas is a reference to Pele. Pele is Aleph, is the first, is the earliest, is the machshava tchila that like the Tanat Belio says, Magid mireshis achris. Whatever was going to be was already in the Pele Elyon, was already in Keser. So he niflas beinenu. We don't understand how this could be. Me'es Hashem haisazais. We turn around and we look at our whole journey and we say it was exactly how it needed to be, precisely how it needed to be. And so I would say this is a paradoxical thing. It's very deep. We're uncovering layers and layers, very deep. And now, very deep. In the moment that we mamish regret, we reveal the way in which there's no reason for regret.
Again, we reveal...
The moment that I look back and I say, oh my gosh, I wasted my life, turns out you didn't waste your life. Because it all led you to this awakening. That's so deep.
When you ask the question, what was I
then you have to concretize it. And you have to concretize it. Let's finish up. That's what the Rebbe says. So tainus is only a part of a person, but a hevel. But the hevel, the chevel is mamish, is the whole body and the whole guf, and the whole neshama. Hevel shel adam hu chevel hamekasher neshama l'makam yishar shel toiv ulehepech chas v'shalom u'kemisha saneach. When a person breathes in like this, hu bebechinas toisif rucham yigvayon. Breathe deeply. You let it out, and it's like your spirit leaves. One breath is all that divides between the chevel de kedusha and chas v'shalom the chevel de tuma. And you just cleanse yourself completely. It could be any given moment during the day. You need a restart. You stop, take a big breath, and then you say Gewalt. Maybe the whole challenge, because we're doing it micro now, within the span of a day, forget about a whole lifetime, within the span of this day, it turns out everything went exactly how it should have been. And right now, I'm tapping into that perspective. HaKadosh Baruch Hu not just is with me, was with me, and now I'm taking the next right step. And that's the way that we proceed. Step after step, higher and higher. Hashem Malach, Hashem Melech, and Hashem. Shreinu Chevra, thank you so much. Oh yeah, the Rebbe's Torah.
Endless, we can endless. Talk about
endless. I want to convey to you just this point. The Torahs that we're learning now are the most basic in the whole Sefer. They're not basic; they're so deep, but they're the most contained, simplest, covered in one. I'm telling you, once you get into the longer teachings, it's oceanic. It's mamish, like a yam, an infinite yam.